Welcome to another episode of the Less is More Sports podcast. And if you couldn't tell by me and Matt's attire, you probably have no idea what we're going to talk about first today. And let's get right into it. The Colts hold off the Patriots for a 27-17 win, not only snapping the Patriots' 7-game winning streak, but this is also the first win against Bill Belichick coach Patriots since 2009. Here's my question, Matt, to start it all off. Does Jonathan Taylor now have a legitimate MVP chance?
He should. I mean, I can't fathom why he wouldn't. The guy is trailing only his own team in rushing touchdowns since at least October. He's got 17. The Colts as a team have 20. The second most is the Eagles. They also have 17. There are teams that do not have, as a whole, between quarterback, running back, third running back, halfback, even receivers on a draw, there are teams that do not have as many rushing touchdowns as Jonathan Taylor does. And when you do something that's special, and I know that I think we're all still in agreement that when Derrick Henry is healthy, he's still the best running back. But he's not. He's not healthy right now, which sucks. But Jonathan Taylor is getting a huge chance to shine. He is a huge reason why the Colts obviously have won that, not only the game last night, but every game since like week 5 or 6. I mean, it's just been incredible watching that run. Carson Wentz only needed to throw the ball 6 times last night or 5 times last night because of the way the running game helped control the tempo, control the pace, and didn't let him make any bad decisions until the fourth quarter, but we'll get into that. But yes, Jonathan Taylor by far needs to be right up there with Tom Brady and Kyler Murray for the MVP award, and he's at least deserving of Offensive Player of the Year. If he does not get Offensive Player of the Year, as much as I love Cooper Kupp, I don't know what's wrong with this league if he does not get Offensive Player of the Year, if he continues on this tear. He is going to score upwards of 20 rushing touchdowns probably because there's still 3 games to go, and one of them is against the Jaguars, who they're going to have their own segment. And I mean, if he's not at least in the top 3 of voting, I am going to boycott the NFL because this guy has transformed his team in the 2 years he's been there. He's helped teams with aging Phillip Rivers and recuperating Carson Wentz get into the playoff picture after slow starts. Jonathan Taylor is one of those guys he reminds me a lot of Sean Alexander, to be honest. Like a guy who elevates the players around him with the offensive line he's been given. And the Colts have a good defense. Now, I don't know about the playoffs. We still got to see how that shakes out. But Jonathan Taylor's got to be in the MVP discussion. You cannot tell me that guy is not a top 3 player in the league right now.
One of the biggest arguments I've heard against Jonathan Taylor being in the MVP discussion is that he doesn't have the numbers that some of these running backs in years past have had and have not won the MVP. Well, Matt, I'll get to my point on this in a second. I was looking at a graphic yesterday watching the game, and it showed the last 6 MVP winners that were running backs. And it showed their numbers side by side for Jonathan Taylor through the first 14 games. Yardage-wise and yards per carry, Jonathan's a little bit below them, but touchdowns, he's above them. But here's my thing, and here has always been my stance on MVPs. It is not always the numbers that you put up. It is the plays that you make and when you make them. I will say this. Here's the numbers that I care about. When Jonathan Taylor rushes for 100 yards, the Colts are 8-0. Exactly. Not only that, when you watched the game yesterday, the Patriots were down by 20, scored 17 unanswered. Jonathan Taylor seals the game with that touchdown run. Those are the types of plays you see from MVP candidates. So,
yes.
Again, and I also want to ask you this, though, Matt, because as much credit as we're giving Jonathan Taylor, in case the fans can't see, Matt's name on the show right now is Quentin Nelson, #1 stan, which I got to say, I love me some pancakes. I love me some Big Q as well. But in all seriousness, though, we saw Jonathan Taylor start to kick it into gear as the health of the offensive line started getting healthy. So now, Matt, my question to you is, how big was that to get help for that O-line to get healthy?
I mean, it's everything. Quentin Nelson is a perennial all-pro candidate. Ryan Kelly is a hell of a center who doesn't get the recognition he deserves because there are a lot of good centers. Braden Smith is an outstanding tackle. Heck, the most disappointing guy on the offensive line is the big free agent signing, Eric Fisher. When he gets in the game, I get nervous. And it's amazing. I mean, when that offensive line is kicking and when it's healthy, they're pretty much unblockable. I mean, you're going to struggle to get into that backfield. The holes that Taylor runs through are huge. If Carson Wentz and Jonathan Taylor have not bought that offensive line steak since that game against the 49ers at least, then they owe them like a mansion over in Zionsville or something, because my goodness, when those guys are healthy, they just bully you and they will get in your head. And I mean, we've seen the ability that Quentin Nelson has to just pancake guys and then respectfully come over and help them up, like grabbing the hand, like, yeah, I own you, but I'll help you up because you're a good guy. But Les, the other thing I want to talk about with that game is how even with Jonathan Taylor and the offensive line playing that well, my big takeaway from that game is that literally the one thing that always bothers me about Indianapolis this season, especially, every game they lose. The second adversity shows up, they have a tendency to wilt a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And in this game, the first half is euphoric, blocking a punt. Nyheim Hines has a great run. Jonathan Taylor is picking up blitzers and just nailing them. And then the third quarter starts and it's slow. And things aren't going the way you expect. Marvin Badgley misses a kick, so you don't get 3 more points. Michael Pittman gets into a little bit of a kerfluffle with the Patriots cornerback. He gets ejected, even though he was kind of pushed into him. But we're not going to talk trash on this one. Michael Pittman gets ejected. Badgley misses a kick. Mo Alley Cox has a touchdown sail through his hands. Finally, Carson Wentz has that wild horse interception that kind of changes the flow of the game. There are a lot of things that are going wrong right now, and you've got Belichickian dark magic happening over on the sideline. You don't know what's coming, and with 2 minutes to go, you even tweeted it. I was thinking it. It's here we go again. Mm-hmm. This is Murphy's Law. What has gone wrong will go wrong. Wentz is throwing an interception. Taylor is getting going, but he's not getting the big chunks they got. I think that we were all thinking when the Colts got that ball just before the 70-yard run that here we go. They're going to hit the 2-minute warning. They're going to run 2 plays and maybe get it down to like a minute and 15 seconds. And the Patriots, by some act of God, are going to get one play that puts them at the 30-yard line. They'll take a shot into the end zone. We're going to overtime, and they're going to win. And instead, we get one of the most fun moments I think I've ever had, like as a fan of this franchise, just watching Jonathan Taylor find a giant hole, getting through Dante Hightower, and just turning on the Jets to get to the end zone, and turning what seemed like a 3-point potential loss into a 10-point euphoric win, because not only do I feel like they exercised demons when they overcame this adversity to win the game, now they have breathing room. They play at Arizona on Christmas Day. And, you know, even though Arizona is kind of down right now, that's not an easy game. It's never an easy game when you got to try to contain Kyler Murray, Rondale Moore, and they don't have to contain DeAndre Hopkins now, but they still got to watch out for James Conner. So you can, I don't want to say afford, but if you lay an egg in that game, it doesn't hurt you now, because you still have 2 games to regain your balance against the Raiders, who are in a free-for-all, and the Jaguars, who are in a black hole of pain. So watching that game, all I can think about is the repercussions for this on the season, because not only does Andrew Luck could not beat the Patriots in 6 tries. He's 0-6. Carson Wentz doing the Patriot method. The Colts patrioted the Patriots last night. They forced mental errors. They had a game plan that involved their quarterback doing anything but being spectacular, and they still come out of there with a win. And, you know, right now it feels great. Like I said, this gives you breathing room in the playoff challenge, especially with the Chargers losing. And now you look at the other matchups. I'm rooting for Tennessee today to knock Pittsburgh out of it, which I know is weird, but go Titans. I mean, this game feels like it just feels great. There's no other way to say it. You've gotten the monkey off your back with a team that was 1-5 to start the year. It just feels absolutely amazing. And it's the offensive line. It's Taylor. Wright's play calling has improved. And just the little guys like Ashton Doolin coming into his own, and EJ Speed. I mean, there's a lot to like right now. I can't lie. Even if they lose next week, the one thing that Indianapolis fans will almost take more than a Super Bowl is beating New England. And they did that. They did something Andrew Luck couldn't do. They did something that hasn't been done since the days of Peyton Manning. It feels great.
I'm with you 100%. I mean, yes, like you said, as much as we want to see a deep playoff run with our Colts, almost beating the Patriots has to be a great feeling because we, like you said, we haven't done it since 2009. And and as you mentioned, I did tweet this. And in a lot of ways, I wanted to, if there was ever a time for the Twitter jinx to work in my favor, that was the time to do it. So that is exactly why I tweeted that the Colts are going to blow this game again because we have seen the Colts blow double-digit leads 3 previous times against Tennessee, against Baltimore, against that evil person named Tom Brady and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But no, this win feels absolutely amazing. And you literally took the words right out of my mouth. We out-patrioted the Patriots. And it feels, oh my gosh. And I'm lost for words right now because it's just, yeah, this is one of the more exciting times as a Colts fan, I can remember in recent memories. And oh man, I'm just lost for words right now. I need a second to regain my thoughts. But okay, I do want to have one thing. And this all does go back to how just impactful Jonathan Taylor has. And you mentioned the play calling with Frank Reich improving. Well, Frank Reich's offense predicates off the running game. With the offensive line getting healthy, with Jonathan Taylor being able to break out and be an MVP candidate, it all works as a domino effect. Frank Reich's play calling improves. The defense has more time to rest on the sidelines so that they can play more energetic. That's another thing, Matt. We got to talk about the defense. And here's one thing I have noticed about our star defender, our star linebacker, Darius Leonard. His first couple years in the league, he was deemed the nickname Maniac because he was flying all over the field, just making tackles left and right. Within the last couple seasons, we've seen his tackle numbers decrease. And we can credit one of two things for that. One, the Colts defense isn't on the field as long. And two, he's not predicating all of his energy on going sideline to sideline making tackles. He's spending a lot more energy forcing turnovers. And that has been one of the key predicates to the success on defense this year. We force turnovers. We have a turnover in now 15 consecutive games. So, Matt, as much as we talk about the line, as much as we talk about Jonathan Taylor being an MVP candidate, we cannot say enough about the job this defense has done and the job Matt Eberflus does as defensive coordinator.
Right. And I will say this, the minute that Darius Leonard figures out how to play coverage the way he plays some of these other things, the league had better watch out because he's going to be one of the best linebackers in the league, if not the best, once he figures out like coverage very well. But yeah, Darius Leonard on certain parts of Colts Twitter has the nickname the Fumble Machine because that's what he does. He forces fumbles. And last night, even when he's not forcing a fumble, he has a very nice interception of Mac Jones. And I mean, it's interesting to see too because the one thing that the Colts 2 rookie pass rushers have been hurt. Kwity Paye and Dio have been hurt at times this year. I still don't think they're 100%, but DeForest Buckner makes up for that by being just DeForest Buckner. And when he went down, he got hurt during that Buccaneers game. And when that happened, I looked at my dad and was like, if that's an injury of any substance, their season's over because DeForest Buckner, that may be one of my favorite trades of all time when everything is said and done, just because, the Colts could have had Javon Quinlaw, who isn't really panning out. But instead, they've got DeForest Buckner, who is absolutely amazing, absolutely a leader on the team. He and Darius Leonard combined just make for a very, very strong front to that defense. And what we're not talking about, too, is the fact that this secondary has been banged up most of the year. Xavier Rhodes, for that renaissance season he had last year, doesn't look like the same guy. Julian Blackmon is out for the year. They've been reduced to playing Andrew Sendejo, a cast-off from the Cleveland Browns, as a starter because of that. Kari Wills just got back. And I mean, they did lose the first-round pick officially last night because of Carson Wentz's snap count, which I'm fine with. If you listen to what Chris Ballard has been saying all year, he's been calling this an evaluation year. And it looks like the worst case scenario in this evaluation year is going to be 9-8. 9-8 with your quarterback being in a boot throughout the season. Your best receiver being Michael Pittman Jr., which isn't an insult necessarily, but the Colts receiving core does need a little bit of a infusion to make it better. So I just think that says so much about how this team is built in the trenches that they can do this. I mean, it was a rough start to the year, but that's just what's going to happen when you've got a new quarterback and an offense that's not really sure of itself. It's going to be tough, especially when you're playing a very tough schedule where you got to go 2 Baltimore. You've got the Rams and Seattle in back-to-back weeks. So, I mean, if the worst case scenario for this evaluation year, starting 1-5, having Hard Knocks be announced, which is usually a death knell for your team, and the worst case scenario is 9-8, I'm taking that 10 days out of 10 because it means even when you're playing poorly, you're still competitive and you're only going to get better from there. First round pick or no.
If I'm not mistaken, you also predicted this at the beginning of the year, that the Colts would start very
I
poor
said they would
and
start
then they would
2-5.
sneak into the playoffs. And it's looking like
said
your
that.
prediction is going to come to fruition.
Even if it doesn't, I'm still happy.
Right. I mean, like you said, it is an evaluation year. You really can't ask for much more. And this definitely gives us promise going forward. And as a Colts fan, you almost hate that because the last time we had so much promise going forward, of course, the big retirement announcement from Andrew Luck happened, and then we took another step back, and then we've been trying to regain momentum going forward. But again, man, there's just a lot of reason to be excited as a Colts fan as a Colts fan in the future. And I'm happy. I mean, I'll live without a first round pick because if you really, since Chris Ballard got there, take away Quentin Nelson, some of our best players have been.
Yeah, the gems are in the later rounds.
Yeah. So most and none bigger than our MVP candidate.
Yep.
Which is amazing. It's amazing that, I watched him at Wisconsin for those 3 years and he rushed for 6,000 yards in 3 years. And it's amazing that he did not go in the first round, but you can also credit that to a couple things. One, running backs aren't viewed as first round priorities anymore for whatever reason. And two, the workload that he got at Wisconsin. So
was just insane. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean,
So
when you get that much, that much wear and tear definitely is a reason to not draft a running back as high. But, I knew Jonathan Taylor would come in the league and just be awesome. I didn't predict an MVP candidate at first, but I predicted a very, very good running back, which he has definitely turned out to be.
He is certainly that. And now to keep fans who are not located in the state of Indiana interested, we're actually going to talk about other topics that have to do with the sports world because that's what we're supposed to do. We're a sports show. So if we were a Colts podcast, we probably just have a bunch of angry comments right now. So we're going to talk about some other stuff.
If we were a Colts podcast, we would be definitely competing with Bring the Juice. Shout out to Cody Fledger and everybody like that too. I actually like Cody Fledger. He's a really cool guy. Got respect for him.
I just want to have juice now. I like want to get a juicy juice and just like chug it.
Get the juicy juice. I mean, yeah, this water's not cutting anymore.
You need some juicy juice.
I need some juicy juice. Man,
this show's going to be fun because we're already riding high, and now we're going to talk about stuff that really doesn't affect us that much, but we're going to have fun with it. So without further ado.
Speak for yourself, because there's a couple topics that do affect me.
Hey, that's your fault, man, not mine. That's you. That's on you.
That's okay.
So without further ado, Les, I think it's time to run the 2-minute drill.
I think it is. So you have the timer ready?
Yep. All right. We're going to do something a little different today, though, so you'll know when it's time.
All right. Sounds good. So getting into our first topic, we're going to talk about this crazy transfer portal that's been going on in college football. So first question is very simple but effective. Is this the most entertaining transfer portal of all time? You got the timer ready?
Yep. Hitting it.
And I'm going to make this answer short and sweet. It absolutely is. And my answer is simple. Give me another transfer portal with these caliber of names. Case in point.
Yep. I totally agree with you. This is the most interesting transfer portal I think I've ever seen myself. Even the little moves like Michael Penix going to Washington seem huge because he's getting back in touch with Kellen DeBoer, a guy we both agreed was going to be an amazing pickup for the Washington Huskies. That's his former offensive coordinator. He'll fit in perfectly in the Pac-12 where the motto is air it out until there's no air left in the football. He's going to be fine there. The one move that I don't like is Spencer Rattler going to South Carolina. I, honest to God, think he's on the path to ending up being a much more tragic Tate Martell because, like I said, I know I use this defense against Florida because it's in the SEC East where anything is possible. But you've already been kicked out of one program that breeds quarterbacks, and now you're moving on to a program in the SEC, not really known for dynamic offenses, in a division with Georgia and the upstart new kid on the block, Kentucky. I don't really like that move, but I'm going to let you wrap up this segment. We got about 30 seconds left by talking about the one guy I know you want to get into, which is Quinn Evers.
Yeah, the significance, you touch on the significance of Quinn Ewers to Spencer Rattler going to South Carolina, but the significance of Quinn Ewers going to Texas is that, look, Quinn Ewers is one of the biggest names that come out of Texas high school football in recent memory. So for Sarkisian, an offensive coach, to land that is absolutely huge for the program.
That was our buzzer.
Perfect timing.
So, yeah, we got that perfectly. So, Les, what are we moving on to now?
We're going to move on just to some other wrap-ups of the transfer portal. What are some other impact transfers that stand out to you? And, Matt, I'm going to tell you one that is very underrated to me is Dylan Gabriel transferring to UCLA. Look, senior quarterback Dorian Thompson Robertson, who I am a big fan of. I watched him at Bishop Gorman in high school. Actually, at the time, thought he was better than Tate Martell, and it's come to fruition that he has ended up going to have a better college career than Tate Martell. But he had an extra year of eligibility thanks to the COVID year. He is, I guess, now deciding that he will not come back. So this plug in Dylan Gabriel to be the next quarterback of the Bruins. And this also tells me that the Chip Kelly and Oregon rumors are not true and that he will be staying at UCLA. So the Dylan Gabriel to UCLA move definitely stands out to me.
It's not an official move yet, but the one I am very eager to see is the Incarnate Word quarterback Cameron Ward move. I think that's going to be a really big move for whoever picks him up. I did have a chance to watch some Incarnate Word football when I was very bored on a Saturday once. That kid's the real deal. I'm excited to see what program's going to get him and how he's going to change it. I don't really think he'll follow his coach to Washington State. That doesn't make much sense. But it would be cool to watch a Michael Penix, Cameron Ward quarterback matchup when I'm bored and trying to find something good to watch for the Apple Bowl. Still, that's a big move that stands out to me. If I had to go with the wide receiver, Louisville has a transfer coming in from Tennessee at running back, who's one of the all-time leading SEC rushers, although it doesn't feel like it. That's going to be a big move for the Cards because next season with Malik Cunningham coming back, it's going to be a lot of ground and pound. You've got two dynamic rushers, two very athletic rushers.
Which favors Satterfield's style, too.
Yep. So that's a big move for me, especially for a guy who's trying to prove to a fan base he can keep his job. But, yeah, Cameron Ward definitely my number one, even though he hasn't picked the school yet. I'm very excited to see where he's going to go, and it's going to be really fun to see. We got the buzzer.
So, anyways, taking it from the transfer portal to the recruiting portal, if that's even the correct terminology. But our next question is thoughts on the college football signing day that was on Thursday. And Matt, you already know which team I'm going to talk about the most is the Texas Longhorns. And let me tell you, I was at work all day on Thursday, and I was trying to follow it as best I could, but just one after another. And not only just getting the recruits that we had already verbally committed to sign, we were also getting players to commit from the likes of Michigan or flip from Ohio State and other powerhouses. So that was very impressive to see Texas land some of those recruits on the signing day. But also what also stood out to me was that Duke got 16 new recruits to come in on signing day thanks to new head coach Mike Elko. So my teams gave me a lot to be excited for on National Signing Day.
You know, it's funny you mentioned Duke because if there was any team that was more disappointing than Duke this year for any of us, it was probably IU football, going 2-11 thanks to all those injuries and just a brutal schedule. But this year, their recruiting class is only 2 points behind Clemson. Clemson is the 17th recruiting class. Indiana is the 18th ranked recruiting class, which honestly surprises me a lot given the fact the season they had and the fact that at the end of the day, Indiana football still isn't a household name. And this is a big deal for especially Wilson trying to keep his job up there. You know, it's not Wilson anymore. Who's the love everybody guy? Coach Love, everybody, whose name is escaping me right now, and his staff up there, they fired their offensive coordinator. He took a pay cut after this disappointing season. But it's really interesting to me that they're still going out and getting decent enough players that they're finishing only a half point behind Clemson, which really makes me worried about Clemson because they've already lost both their coordinators. They only have the 17th recruiting class. They're falling back with Indiana. And Dabo Sweeney keeps falling more and more out of favor with people on Twitter. So, yeah, that's what the big takeaway for me was that even after a horrible, no good, very bad Alexander in the very no good day type year that Indiana had, they still have the 18th ranked recruiting class, and they still are doing the best they can to get into a winning program, which is really darn impressive to me.
All right, moving on to the next topic. Head coach of Jackson State, Deion Sanders, gets #1 player and cornerback Travis Hunter to flip from Florida State. Does this say more about Sanders or the state of the Seminoles? And let me tell you, this is 100% tells me more about the job that Deion Sanders is doing at Jackson State. I've watched listened to several podcasts where he's gotten on, and he said this is exactly what he was going to do and prove that he can bring the recognition to an HBCU school and build it up from the ground up and prove that they can compete with the powerhouses in college football if just given the opportunity. And it starts right. And sometimes it just takes that one player to commit. And getting #1 player Travis Hunter absolutely does that. So nothing but love to Deion Sanders from me.
I have to agree with you. I absolutely love everything about this. Even the parts that involve Barstool, which, I'm not very high on Barstool. I don't know much about Barstool.
Me
But
either.
it's still amazing to me that, like, they're donating money. They're starting a Fire Mike Norvell Twitter space. It's just interesting to see all that. And the fact that this shows, like, what national letters of intent can do, especially now that you can make money on them. And that a young man is choosing to go to a place that's not a traditional power in any shape, or form, and go play for a legend like Deion Sanders, who's already, like, reinvigorated not only his program but the entire conferences for HBCUs in general. It's amazing. I have never seen more coverage of the Celebration Bowl, and I think that's really freaking amazing because there are a lot of fans who don't know that the favorite players that they watched growing up went to places like Jackson State. They went to places like Alcorn State. And now, not only are we investing in that history and education in that regard, we're seeing now, just like we talked about in our show over the summer, that players are getting more and more power, even at a younger level, that they can do something like this, that they can go and make money, that they can play for a superstar who's going to put their needs ahead of whatever some coach is preaching some other school. It's absolutely wonderful to see. I applaud Deion Sanders. I applaud the job he's done, even though they lost 31-10 yesterday. It's just freaking great. And while we have about 15 seconds left, this is pretty much going to end, I think, Mike Norvell's tenure at Florida State. And the question for me becomes, will Deion Sanders sneak in and steal his job, or will he not? And let's extend it because I know you have a point. I'm going to forget the timer. Keep going. Let's take it.
Okay. So Mike Norvell, before we hopped on the podcast today, just signed an extension with Florida State. So I think that's a no. #2, I do not think Deion Sanders is going to move from even if Mike Norvell was going to get fired, I don't believe Deion Sanders is going to leave an HBCU to go to Florida State because as he's mentioned several times, it's not about the money for him. He has money. It's about building a program and helping these kids reach their full potential, which it was another reason I just absolutely love the job he's doing. Because he talked about on the show is that what's amazing about the state of the HBCU programs right now is that his players at Jackson State in Division I, they're not allowed to work because they just don't have the time. In HBCU schools, they have to, or else they're not going to be able to get to school or have money to get to school. So for him, it's not about his paycheck or his money. It's about helping these kids. That's what him taking the job at Jackson State was about to begin with. So I don't see him leaving to go to a bigger school, my point being. And I'll say I'm blanking on, I had another point. Oh, #3. I just want to point out just how absolutely savage it is for Deion Sanders to steal a recruit from his alma mater of all places. It was amazing.
Yeah,
I love it. This is why he is prime time baby. He is a prime time demon in the recruiting portal. I love it.
Bottom line is, this is great for Deion Sanders. This is great for Travis Hunter. This is great for HBCUs. This is great for college football. And I mean, that's just it. There is nothing to hate about this story, regardless of what people say about people going, regardless what other coaches may say about it's all about young men being guided to go where the money is. No dip, Sherlock. Where do you think they're gonna go? But yeah, everything about this story warms my heart. I absolutely love it. That's all I gotta say. Formality ringing the bell.
There we go.
That was more like a 3-minute drill, but we'll let it slide.
I think that topic was definitely worth the 3 minutes for sure.
Certainly so.
Nothing but love for Deion Sanders on this show.
Please
Anyways,
call us.
moving on to the next topic, and we're switching from college football to the NBA real quick. The Cleveland Cavaliers, biggest surprise of the NBA of this NBA season, and are they for real? Look, on paper, the Cleveland Cavaliers don't impress you at all. But then when you watch them and how they play well together, they do. And let me tell you, I do, as in for real, it depends on your definition of for real. If you say NBA championship contender, no. Playoff team, absolutely. I just love the way this team defends, especially with Jared Allen and rookie sensation Evan Mobley in the middle, which I can't say enough about Evan Mobley and the job that he has done this year with the Cavaliers, but also with how the two guards in the backcourt and Colin Sexton and oh my gosh, why am I blanking on the other one? I literally
Darius Garland.
Yes, Darius Garland. I don't know why I blanked on him. I was big on him coming out of high school, but the job that he's at, those two get a lot of criticism from the jump of not being a good max. But I always said that they did play well together, and they're proving my point just with how they're playing this season. So yes, I like watching this Cleveland Cavaliers team, but do I think they're NBA championship contenders? Not quite.
I mean, you hit the nail on the head, which is like the Cleveland Cavaliers are a very surprisingly good team. I didn't think about them during our NBA preseason talk. And then when you look at their roster, it's like they've got Kevin Love, they've got Ricky Rubio, they've got Darius Garland, they've got Colin Sexton. Mobley in the middle is a godsend, going with Jared Allen, a player who I've always loved. But it's just like you said. There's a difference in the NBA between a nice story and a playoff caliber team and a championship team. And Cleveland isn't there yet. Now, I'm not if Colin Sexton takes a Ja Morant style like leap up in talent, it could be possible. And we're also not giving enough credit to Lauri Markkanen, a guy who was so pissed off with his current situation in Minnesota, comes into Cleveland, no expectations, and has looked phenomenal so far. He looks like he's happy. He's part of the offense, and they already have a great defensive front with Mobley and Allen. It's hard not to love this Cleveland team, but the problem with the Cleveland team is now they don't have enough players because of COVID. They've just informed the league just before we hopped on here that they may not have enough guys to get through their next couple games and may need to stop. And that could damage some of that momentum. But man, Cleveland is a surprisingly hard team to not like. They have so much to offer at a lot of positions. So go Cavs, go Cavs, go Cavs, be in the play-in tournament, shock the Celtics, shock the world.
Sticking with the NBA, we're going to talk about something that we all did know, and that is Steph Curry breaks Ray Allen's career three-point mark. Thoughts on his career to this point? It's simple, Matt. He is the greatest shooter who has ever lived. And with how three-point happy the league is now, thanks to Steph Curry, there might be others that will come close and maybe even make more threes than him in his career. But none of them will be able to change the game the way that he did. I've often said that Steph Curry has changed the league more than any player of my generation. And I stand by that. He is the greatest shooter that will ever live, that we will ever see. Point blank, period. And I've heard the other argument that what if Ray Allen or Reggie Miller played in today's league? Yeah, they'd hit more threes, but they wouldn't impact the league the way Curry has.
No.
The way Curry did.
No. Unless you're 100% right here too. I mean, when we look back, when we're old men, God only knows how many threes Steph Curry will hit by the time he retires. Because you know how long JJ Redick played, you know how long all these other guys played. It's just going to be amazing to see how many threes he actually ends up hitting in his time in the league. He's still the only unanimous MVP. He's got all those titles. He's gunning for another title. I mean, there's just not a lot you can say that hasn't already been said about just how impactful Steph Curry has been in college and in the pros when it comes to championship pedigree and helping mid majors get viability. I mean, Steph Curry has literally done it all, and I mean that's just what makes him amazing. And there's nothing else to say. So let's go to the next topic.
Keeping it within the NBA, Kyrie Irving is returning, but only for away games due to New York vaccination laws. Is it even worth it? My thing is, I heard this on the radio the other day, and I think it's very true. It's the best part-time job ever. He just gets to show up and hoop at away games. But my thing is, you have Kyrie Irving on contract for how many millions of dollars, and you're only getting him for your away games? No, it's absolutely not worth it. They might need him right now because of how hard the Nets have been hit with COVID protocols. I think Durant and Harden are both out right now. So it'd be nice to have Kyrie Irving at least for away games for the time being. But I think they've gotten so accustomed to playing without Kyrie that it's just going to be more of a distraction than anything.
Les, here's the thing about that, though. Kyrie Irving is already in protocols. Already.
Yeah.
He's been a member of the team for like 3 weeks or 3 days again, and he's already in protocols. So it's really not going to change much of anything. I mean, if anything, he'll have to miss more time. He'll have to be tested more often. I don't really think it's going to make that big of a difference. I mean, I know when Kyrie is healthy, he is an arguable top 10 player in the league, but I just can't see it impacting the team in a way that works any better than when Kevin Durant and James Harden are on fire. I mean, it gives you another option, but I really like this Nets team has more depth, it seems, than a lot of those super teams we always talk about. I mean, Blake Griffin doesn't even play that much. He's out of the rotation because of this. So I don't really think it's going to make much of an impact. Like you said, it just seems like a really great part-time job. And I mean, the Nets are going to be fine once they get through their COVID outbreak with or without Kyrie. So I don't really see it being a huge impact move. I really don't.
Switching gears from the NBA to college basketball. However, we're going to start with the women first, as my mama used to taught me growing up, ladies first. But anyways, the UConn women's team are at their lowest rank since 2007. With the loss of Paige Beckers, is she that good or is UConn not that deep? I 100% believe it is that Paige Beckers is that good. I watched this girl play in high school, and she is one of the best high school prospects I have ever seen. She is the type of player that just makes everyone around her better, and UConn is a national championship contender when she is on the floor. So yes, the loss of Paige Beckers for those 6 to 8 weeks is detrimental to the UConn women's. They're going to improve because they're going to have to. But yes, the loss of Beckers was the absolute worst news that Gino Auriemma ever has received as the UConn head coach. Yes, I said that.
I know. And you know, last when you sent me this, the other question is Paige Beckers that good or is UConn not deep? And I don't think the problem is UConn isn't deep. I think not the problem. The good thing is that women's basketball has just gotten that deep. There are a lot of good teams, and they all want to play each other. UConn is playing Louisville, I think, sometime today. There are a lot of really good women's teams out there. I mean, Indiana's women's basketball team is good. U of L is good. South Carolina's good. Baylor's good.
Hey,
there are a lot.
Don't forget about my undefeated Blue Devil women's team led by Kara Lawson.
See, but it seems like a really great coaching hire. The point being, I don't think the problem is that Beckers is that good. There's no question. The other interesting thing is women's basketball is just that deep to me now. You know, there was a time where we'd always make fun of like, UConn's going to be 32-0 again. And now that they're not, people are complaining that they're gone. And I mean, I think it's great. I think it's great there's a competitive nature to it now. I think it's great that these other women's programs have come into their own and fans are supporting them. That Louisville, Kentucky game on last Sunday was one of the most intense and amazing crowd experiences that I had seen. And that was just on television. I love it. I love how deep that women's basketball has become. And I don't think it's a problem with UConn. I think it's great for the sport.
All right, switching gears from the women to the men's. Memphis basketball puts on a clinic versus Alabama. Did the media overreact to the Tiger struggles? 100%. Look, I said this at the preseason. that I wasn't as sold on Memphis because everyone was talking about how good they were going to be. And they did exactly what I expected to do. Yes, they're talented, but they're really young. They went on a 4-game slide, and I knew what was going on. They're a young team adapting to college basketball. Knew this was going to happen. And they showed against Alabama just absolutely how talented of a team they are. They put on an absolute clinic. And not just with flashing their talent as players, but they also showed their chemistry and ball movement, which was spectacular to watch. So yes, the media 100% overreacted to the Tiger struggles, but of course, for good reason. They lost 4 in a row.
In a recurring theme, of course, just after that game, with a chance to show us how good they could really be against Tennessee, they all went out and partied too hard after the Alabama game and got COVID. So that game got canceled. But I agree with you 100% here too. They're a young team made up of young superstars who are still trying to learn the ropes of how to win in college basketball. Whether you want to admit it or not, it's a learning curve, and you've got to get ready to go. You got to learn how to do studying, to adapt to Penny Hardaway's coaching style. It's not an easy transition. And that game, however long ago that was, just showed us how a team can come together and be really good once they figure out each other. It's a growing thing. They got to get chemistry. You aren't born with that chemistry. You got to become a team over time. And I think that was what that game was all about, was becoming a team over time in a hot situation against a really good team wearing throwback uniforms. Memphis is going to be fine.
All right, transitioning from college basketball to the NFL. Urban Meyer is out as the Jaguars head coach. Was this move doomed to start? Now, if you remember correctly, Matt, I actually liked this move originally because I thought Urban Meyer was a really good college coach with a very good offensive repertoire. He was getting the number 1 overall pick in Trevor Lawrence, and watching him in the meetings, I thought, he was just had the attitude that he's just wanting to win at all costs. But you know what? It's been one thing after another, and I have never been more wrong in my life. That is all I have to say about that.
I was among the people who did not like this move from the start, and I do feel vindicated, but I didn't ever think it would be this bad. It was just kind of funny at first, Tim Tebow, the tight end, that's real funny. And then he's kicking players and telling them he'll kick them whenever he wants, which we just found out from Josh Lambo, which is just, how we talked about earlier, how great Deion Sanders is, he's a player's coach and is looking in the best interest for his players. Urban Meyer is not a leader. Or he's not an NFL leader. If you look at your coaches and demand they bring in resumes and threaten to fire them every week and kick your players and get into arguments with Marvin Jones and do all that stuff, you are not meant for this league to be. You are not a leader in that sense. And I know that there's going to be a certain subset of people who are going to moan and whine that players today are soft. Well, you got to be tough too and realize you got to change the game. You've got to be mentally tough and realize you're entering a new league with grown men who are making more money than you possibly by the time it's all over. And you have to treat them with the respect that they have earned by being in the NFL and being an NFL assistant coach, instead of being like, I am the coach of Ohio State. Ezekiel Elliott ain't walking through that door. You can't withhold a scholarship from someone. You've got to be a leader and be a man, accept the hard times, accept the fact that accidents and failure are going to happen. Football is predicated on failure. Winning is predicated on failure. And you've got to accept that, or you don't belong in the league. You cannot be a control freak in the NFL. And Urban Meyer made the mistake of trying to be a control freak in the NFL, and he's paid the ultimate price. And now he's not even going to get any of that money from his 5-year contract after 14 games because he can't control himself. And we all disliked Urban Meyer before. We knew he was withholding details. I don't think we understood how bad he is. I would not be surprised if he never coaches again at any level.
I'm going to add a few things to that. Yes, I mean, I want to touch on your statement when you said, there's going to be those handful of people that say, oh, well, players today are soft. Well, I don't ever remember a time where kicking players was okay. I'm sorry, I don't remember that. And I saw a comment on one thread, and I couldn't help but to agree with it 1,000%. If he's doing this to professionals, guys that arguably make more money than him, what was he doing to those college players?
We don't want to know.
We don't want to know. And maybe that's why the Florida Gators had a messed up background as they did. So I don't know. But yes, you can call players soft today all you want. Let me tell you, I don't think it was ever okay to kick players. And let me tell you, if a coach ever kicked me growing up, trust me, not going to end well. Yeah, get the clap back, exactly. But anyways, moving on to the last topic of the 2-minute drill, that is. And we're going to kick this right into the heart of Kentucky, where me and Matt are both from. Well, Matt claims more of Indiana nowadays, but anyways.
I was born in Indiana. I live in Indiana. I went to school in Kentucky. It's a complicated thing.
It's a very complicated thing. But anyways, but Ballard, a high school in Louisville, holds its own with the likes of the prep schools of the world, Prolific Prep and IMG Academy. Are KHSAA hoops underrated? And let me tell you, this is my area of expertise, Matt, because I was a sports writer in Kentucky for the Sentinel News in Shelbyville, Kentucky, where I covered a lot of KHSAA matchups. And let me tell you, absolutely they are. They are some of the most entertaining games that you will ever see. I covered the starting point guard at Western Kentucky right now, Davion McKnight. I covered him for several years ago. Yes, who beat Louisville with a 13.9 assist game. Covered him.
Pretty good.
Louisville, not to even throw a dig at Louisville, I covered one of their recent recruits while he was at Mayo with Caleb Glenn. Let me tell you, the kid can play. I covered David Johnson before he came to Louisville. Let me tell you, was high on him. Yes, KHSAA is some of the most entertaining basketball you will see, and they are vastly underrated. And with the likes of Ballard hanging in there with Prolific Prep and IMG Academy, this is the recognition that they deserve.
I agree, but I will say, just to assuage the Indiana people watching this, that I do like Indiana too. I mean, it's hard to compete with Indiana basketball and the atmosphere it brings, the giant gyms, the team spirit. And I mean, there are so many Division I guys playing, as evident by yesterday's Crossroads Classic, where a lot of the starting lineups were local Indiana kids. But the KSHAA does produce a lot of really good talent. We can't lie about that. Well, we even forget, like, D'Angelo Russell went to Central for a few years and was a very good guard there before transferring out. I mean, there are a lot of really good guys, especially in the Louisville area, at the top tier of their talent. And I think that kind of gets ignored because Kentucky is a college basketball state. It's never really been a high school basketball state. But there are a lot of very good teams, Ballard being one of them. Fern Creek, of course. I've seen Fern Creek play in person thanks to very strange events, and they look really good. I mean, it's easy to sleep on something when you don't get it, but KSHA basketball is a lot of fun, especially in the Louisville area. When the Louisville Invitational Tournament happens, if you can get a ticket, you need to get down there right away.
I'm going to continue this point even going forward. You talked about the LIT tournament, which is a very popular event held at Valley every year. An event that I will be attending later today, the King of the Bluegrass, held at Fairdale High School, because a good friend of mine, yes, that's tonight. That's been going on the last couple of days. And I know the fans probably can't see my name, but the ones that can, I have Matt Spencer right here, which is that is an laud to him because he is coaching in the King of the Bluegrass today. His North Oldham Mustangs are taking on the North Laurel Jaguars, and number 22 ranked player in the country and UK commit Reed Shepard. So I will be there to support my friend. And I never thought I'd say this, but because Spencer's the coach, go Mustangs.
Ooh, you've got less changing sides in the middle of the stream. Okay, so now on to something that's been near and dear to my heart. For some reason, I'm going to give you top 5 sports predictions for 2022. None of these are going to happen, but they're just me spitballing, and I think they're going to be a lot of fun.
Should we play it like take the bait for me?
Yeah, if you want to, we can do that. I'm going to give you 5 scenarios, Les, and you're going to tell me whether or not they're going to happen in 2022 or not. So I'm going to mix them. I'm going to mix up the order on my phone. I mean, there's no particular order to these, but I've got 5 things right here, and I'm going to start with one that I think you're going to take the bait on right away, which is next year in September, Russell Wilson will be the starting quarterback for the New York Giants, and Aaron Rodgers will be a Denver Bronco.
Aaron Rodgers going to Denver was a prediction that I made, but the Russell Wilson to New York, I wasn't high on it until I had learned that that's what Sierra wants. Sierra wants to go to New York. So I'm going to take the bait because, Russell, you better do what your wife tells you to do.
That's always a good thing. Happy wife, happy life. Okay, Les, your next point. The Warriors will acquire Karis LeVert and Domantas Sabonis at the trade deadline for Tim Wiseman, Jonathan Kuminga, and Moses Moody as the Pacers look to rebuild and go on to win the NBA championship.
You mean James Wiseman?
Yes, sorry, not Tim Wiseman. That's a banjo player. Whoops.
It's okay. But I'm going to take that as well because I think those two players actually fit the Golden State system very well. Whether it happens or not, that would actually be a really good trade to make. So I will take the bait.
Number 3. Get ready for this one. This one's going to be weird. You and I are going to be in for a long, boring summer because MLB baseball will remain locked out until at least July.
Why do you say that?
Because their CBA expired. They're currently in a lockout.
I don't know. I'm not going to take the bait as much on that because I feel like the players are going to get something done. The Players Association is going to get something done. So I think they'll be playing baseball sooner rather than later.
All right, number 4. This time next year, Les, you and I will be talking about the 1 seed in the AFC, Cincinnati Bengals.
Ooh, I want to take the bait, but I'm not because I still think they have to have some depth at both lines before I'm ready to put them at the number 1 seed.
I can totally get that, really. I really can. All right. What was my 5th one? And Les, here's your last one. This one's another NBA trade-based one, which is that by the trade deadline, the Lakers will have acquired Damian Lillard from the Portland Trailblazers by shipping Russell Westbrook to Portland.
I want that trade to happen. It's not that I want to take the bait. I want that trade to happen. But it's not. Because if it was, it would have not that Westbrook wouldn't have gone to Portland, but if Dame wanted to be in LA, it would have happened by now. So I'm going to not take the bait on that.
All right. Well, that's it for me then. Those were the 5 big sports predictions I had. Mostly guys moving around and then the sad news of a Major League Baseball lockout. So that concludes my opinions for 2022. Do you have anything else to say to the fans before we head to the new year? Because we're going to take the next couple of weeks off in line with what most professional sports leagues do. But Les, do you have any other last second segments you want to cover before we head on out and enjoy some Christmas cookies?
I'm going to make this count because we're going to be off for a couple weeks. So let's go ahead and make this count. Since Matt joined the show, we've had plenty of memorable moments. And one of my favorite moments that I want to go back to was the Bishop Sycamore episode. Because I will often be on the show. I will often, as people some that know, my actual full-time job is a FedEx courier for the time being. And, I spend long hours on the road delivering packages with really little to do. And sometimes I get a truck where I can hook my phone up and listen to this podcast while I'm delivering. But other times I can't. Some of the times that I have not been able to even listen to the episodes, I'll be thinking about the Bishop at Sycamore episode because, look, man, I'm the type of guy who laughs a lot. But that episode, I have not laughed that hard in so long, whether it was because of the situation altogether or the joke that just absolutely floored me from Matt when we're talking about where I say, like, who plays football at 3 a.m.? And Matt goes, oh boy, 3 a.m.
A joke I actually stole from SpongeBob. Because there's this episode where it's where Squidward goes, who wants to eat a Krabby Patty at 3 a.m.? And Patrick goes, oh boy, 3 a.m. So when you said that, I was like, you're the Squidward here, and I'm Patrick. It's like, oh boy, 3 a.m. Gonna turn on ESPN. But no, that episode was really good. And then, of course, like the second episode you have me on is the Jesus Loves You incident. And I'm like, I'm never going to be on that podcast again now that I've said that. Because I said that was one of my favorites. It was just like I played at Christian school, and our trash talk was never "Jesus loves you, may the Lord bless and keep you," as we're like crossing people up, and I'm like, Les is gonna kick me off the podcast. I'm done. I'm finished. I'm fired. And he's like, "No, you're coming back next week," and I'm like, "Great." And then of course, learning to Dougie was also fun. I don't even know why we started doing that. Dougieing was fun, but no, my favorite is still probably when we were talking about the Brooklyn Nets in the NBA preseason. I go, "That's a hell of a three-headed monster, the King Ghidorah, if you will." And you just lose it, and I'm like, "Uh-oh, I've done it again. I've done it again."
Hey, but you even got some love from DJ on that. The baseball player that I've had on this podcast many times. You even got some love from DJ on that one.
I know. I mean, that Michael Scott gif is just perfect because sometimes I'll just open my mouth and I don't know where I'm going, and I'll just hope the words make sense in the end. And I mean, that's literally every time I talk about sports because it's just fun to see the analogies I can come up with. Like even today, I think I said black hole of nothingness to describe the Jaguars franchise, and that's always fun. That's always fun to describe it that way. But yeah, the Bishop Gorman episode was a lot of fun. The college basketball preseason episode we did was just so much fun. That was probably the most intensive work we ever did on this podcast, and it was totally worth it because it was just a fun episode.
Well, so far that's been our most popular episode, and for good reason, because I think that was I agree. As far as topics go, that was my favorite topic to talk about because of how much you and me both love college basketball. Plus, it gave me an excuse to brag about my Blue Devils too, but for obviously good reason because they are legit.
Man, that was like our magnum opus, I would say. So it's been a good year. We've had a lot of great topics to cover. So hopefully that'll continue for 2022, in spite of all the craziness going on right now with the holiday seasons and whatnot. And it's been a trying year too. We didn't even have a chance to talk about some of the more devastating topics like Demarius Thomas's passing and the way COVID's impacted sports. But we like to keep it light on this podcast. We don't ignore the bad stuff going on, but it's been a trying year. It's been a fun year. And we just want to thank anyone watching this podcast for having fun with us, listening along with us. And we hope that we'll keep that going in 2022. And we hope that wherever you're listening, whoever's listening, that you also have that same kind of, may your sports be fun, may your outlook be positive, and may life be kind to you. Because those are the three things that, especially after a year like this, it feels like it's important to say. So thank you for watching, listening, whatever.
Matt, you said it perfectly because it's not that we don't know some of the tougher topics, or it's that we just want to make this more fun for our listeners, and I hope that the listeners are continuing to enjoy. But yes, obviously the tragic passing of Demarius Thomas, prayers for his family, and I absolutely think that Demarius Thomas is a class act, and I hate to see a life taken so soon. But we are more than aware of some of these tragic topics that are going on. But we continue to just try to shed in a world full of darkness. Me and Matt try to shed light in the sports world with our upbeat personalities and our positive outlooks. So I want to thank the listeners, and you know what? I think that about wraps up another episode of the Less is More Sports podcast. See you next year, guys.
See you next year. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year. Stay safe.